welcome to PGurus channel. I'm your host Sri Iyer. Today I'm joined by Savio Rodrigues of the Goa Chronicle. Savio, welcome to PGurus channel.
Thank you, Sri, for having me once again.
So viewers, we are going to talk about a very weighty subject. We all witnessed the killing of Ajay Pandita, a Sarpanch in the Kashmir Valley. Now, there is an article that has appeared in Goa Chronicle, and I'll read the heading out to you. Another Sarpanch threatened in Kashmir. This time it is Goa Chronicle chief reporter's family. So I'll let Savio explain what happened. I just wanted to tell you that the name of the person who was doing the threatening, his name is Ayaz Ahmed Lone, and a lot of things have happened since this article got published. I think today's topic is what the government needs to do to ensure that there is enough security for all the Sarpanches in the Kashmir Valley. Savio, please take it from here.
Thank you, Sri. A couple of days ago, my chief reporter's mother, who is a Sarpanch of a village in Baramulla, and she belongs to the Sikh minority community, was doing an investigation on development work that was happening in the village because that's her responsibility. And she realized that the work was very fraudulently done. So she raised a complaint about it to the concerned contractor with regards to the problem. The concerned contractor is this gentleman called Mr. Lone. Now, Mr. Lone is not only just a contractor, he's also known to be a person who is nefarious in his activities and has been involved with radical outfits as far as connects are concerned in that area. He's also known to be spreading a little bit of communal tension in the village, and that was clearly evident with the threats he gave the family of the chief reporter that works for us. Normally you would pass it off as a normal village skirmish that has happened in a village. But what he said during the verbal threats that he issued to the chief reporter, his father, was that, remember Ajay Pandita's killing, you need to be careful, was what he said. And that's a very frightening statement to make. That's a very diabolic statement to make, because what you're really telling the Sarpanches who do not belong to the majority community in Kashmir, that we are going to take care of you. Not in a good way, but in a bad way if you don't listen to things that we are saying, because we are the majority community in Kashmir. So, of course, a police complaint was filed, and the police, are investigating the matter at this point of time. They have neutralized the situation to a certain extent, and even the Indian agencies that are in Kashmir managed to get into the situation when the police was a little reluctant. But now the matter seems to be under some level of control, but the threat still looms because of the radical outfit that this guy has been known to be associating with. He was also one of the persons who was in Delhi during the anti-CAA protests. And so you have this person who's actually very anti-India, that is issuing threats to a Sarpanch who's pro-India. And that's really what this problem is all about.
Well, Savio, there has been reports of this new front called the TRF. And this is a new organization. Apparently, they claim responsibility for the killing of Ajay Pandita. And I'm wondering if they are trying to recreate the atmosphere of 1989, wherein they were putting up posters, and making speeches from loudspeakers that all the Kashmiri Hindus, Kashmiri non-Muslims, I should say, should leave the valley. Otherwise, there is, threat to their health. And practically 5 lakh, Hindus and other minorities left the valley. Now, the question is, what is TRF? Where is their funding coming from? And how serious is this situation?
Well, the TRF stands for the Resistance Front. They chose to take a very Western name so that they don't get associated with Islamic radicalism. That was the strategy number one. I don't think it has worked for them as far as the international markets are concerned. But to be very honest, the Resistance Front is nothing but a front of Lashkar-e-Taiba. So very strategically, they are disassociating themselves from the Hizbul Mujahideen. And Hizbul Mujahideen itself is disassociating itself from the resistance front so that it gives it a new identity. So this is a dual strategy that they build up on their own. The resistance front is completely funded by the Lashkar-e-Toiba. And to the information that I have, you have a lot of Turkish funding coming into the resistance front, but the controllers are people in Pakistan. So these are the same people who also work with what you would call the I Stand with Kashmir movement happening across America as well. So it's the same lobby giving it a very westernized appeal so that the people in the West can understand that the plight of the Kashmiri Muslims in Kashmir is far more worse than it's made out to be, which is not really true. But this is the strategy that they've adopted. So they've taken a very aggressive strategy. They put posters across Kashmir warning the Kashmiri Pandits, and this is a final warning apparently, which they put up 2 days ago, that if the Kashmiri Pandit collaborated with the Indian government, or if the Kashmiri Pandit was an informer of the Indian government, they would be killed.
Well, would that be cause enough for the law and order agencies to round up these ruffians and show them what the Indian law is?
I think the police and the Indian Army is working on dealing with terrorists in Kashmir at this point of time. The fact is, the resistance front at this needs to create a level of fear in the Kashmiris, and that's what they did. You see, on the same day when my chief reporter's mother was threatened, another Sarpanch was actually kidnapped. A woman was kidnapped. And she was then made to say that she would leave and resign the Sarpanch post by a notorious character similarly linked to these radical outfits. So the point is, as I mentioned before also, you keep killing one person or you keep neutralizing the situation and another situation is allowed to grow. So these are not local people. These are people from external sources that are feeding the young Kashmiri youth and the Muslim youth that are there across the country with this message of fighting the Indian government very vehemently and very aggressively. And strangely, this has taken a aggressive shape after certain political leaders from Kashmir were released from their detention. And these are questionable politicians that are released. And let me be brutally honest. I think Farooq Abdullah in Kashmir is one politician that needs to be put in jail. He needs to be tried for corruption, and he needs to be investigated for his links with questionable outfits as far as anti-national activities are concerned. But the Indian government has released him. I'm sure they have a strategy behind doing that. The Indian government seems to be associating with everybody questionable in the whole lot of the Kashmir problem. And that's not going to be very helpful for them, is my problem. So TRF is finding confidence in the lack of decisiveness in the political decisions of the government. That is why they're doing what they're doing, nothing else.
Now, the handlers have the money across the border. How is the money coming across the border?
I can tell you what I know, okay?
No, we can make a guess, intelligent guess. I mean, I think in one of our previous hangouts, sorry, let me finish the question.
Yeah.
Now one of our previous hangouts, you had mentioned that at many of the border crossings, there is no female police. So if a female were to cross over wearing a burqa, they basically come through and they can bring whatever they want. I mean, that was one of the suspicions or the fears you had expressed. And I'm just curious.
I think one of the greatest teams of the radical outfits and the terror outfits in Kashmir is something known as overground workers, OGWs as they are called. The percentage of OGWs that are high between male and female are female OGWs. So female OGWs are really the women that work with these terror outfits to do activities which otherwise the men are caught with. So one of the problems that the Indian border faces, and it will only be resolved by 2021, is when the first batch of women Jawans come out, because the border postings that are there, and the ways you can walk into Kashmir, the borders don't have checks by women who are jawans for women who are coming in from the other side. So a male cannot frisk a woman across the border. So that's one of the loopholes that the Indian government is working to close, and that's only going to happen by 2021 when the first batch comes out. Otherwise, you have senior officers, but the senior officers are not at the station in the border. So OGWs, and in particular women, are one of the routes to actually bring in money and to bring in weapons and to bring in RDXs into Kashmir. So it's known by everybody over there. It's just that they have to plug it.
Well, that's one of the challenges that the Indian government has. Now, in terms of, this is the time when many of these terrorists try to sneak into India, right? And yes. I think we established this in one of our previous conversations, yes, that it is now very difficult for more than 2 or 3 people at a time to cross because there's enough sensory detection equipment. I might have done this. I may have done this thing with another guest on our show, but yes, I'll just say right now, clusters cannot get in. I mean, India has enough intelligence, CCTV, whatever you want to call it, that they can catch more than 3-4 people. So they have to come really like yes, in a trickle. So usually what happens is there's firing at the LOC to kind of try and distract the army, and then people sneak in. Anytime there is a firing, there is an attempt yes, to sneak in. Somewhere along the LOC or the international border, somewhere somebody is trying to sneak in. This has been a long-standing yes, strategy of Pakistan. The only difference now is when India retaliates this thing, they try to decimate the post from where these things come. So it makes them yes, that much harder to go back, reconstruct it, all those things, bunkers have to be redone, put the pain on them even more.
Yes.
Fine, that's all fine. But now, this year, I heard a record number of people are trying to come into Kashmir. Do you have any information on that?
Well, see, actually, most people coming into Kashmir right now and infiltrating the border, no matter how much security you have, is suddenly they've realized that Kashmir is going out of hand from Pakistan, and they need to keep Kashmir continue to boil.
Yeah, the pot boiling. Yeah, keep the pot boiling. Yeah.
In India is making its own moves in POK and Gilgit-Baltistan and those territories, which are rightfully what we should be doing. So they're a little panic situation with the Islamic radicals and the Pakistan ISI. And I think it's what they're trying to do is they're trying to take the focus away from Kashmir for some time and bring it to the rest of India. That's what they did with the anti-CAA protests, because Kashmir was basically on a lockdown.
Right.
But now that it's opened up, and now that the certain key politicians are out in the open, they're back to creating nuisance in Kashmir. See, the only way these outfits work is if they spread fear. Right? So fear is what they're putting into the minds of the people. And what the Indian armed forces are trying to do is to reinstill hope into the people in Kashmir, that, we are there. Which is why over the last several weeks, you have seen the neutralization of terrorists in Kashmir. And the Indian armed forces are doing a fantastic job of neutralizing the terrorists. There is no other way to eradicate this problem.
Right.
Because it's a continuous problem. So the only way is pick up the terrorists and have him shot, because they are not going to change otherwise. There is no reformation happening over there. There is a blind following of the jihadi mindset that they have, of the radical mindset that they have, that they want to destroy India and they want to hold on to Kashmir while destroying India. So I don't think there's any other solution. There is no talks you can do with such people. They just have to be eradicated. And I think the Indian army is doing the fantastic thing. Now, the TRF people, their main commander is based out of Baramulla. Now, Baramulla is the same area where my chief reporter comes from, right? And Baramulla is a district in Kashmir that also is known for heavy, intensive separatist activities around. So you have a whole lot of these youngsters, who are OGW workers, male and female, that report to these radical outfits that are considered to be fighting for the rights of Kashmir. This whole thing has been driven in their mind that they're fighting for the rights of Kashmir. and that the Indian government is against their welfare, and that is why they take it up to join these radical outfits to actually attack India and the democracy that India stands for. But that needs to change, and that can only change with education. That
Yes.
can.
Now, a couple of quick questions before we wind up this show. Savio, first one is internet. Is it completely enabled in Valley now, which means that all the shadow programs can be operational now?
Well, you don't get 4G and 3G and 5G in Kashmir at this point of time.
Okay.
Uh,
So it's so
but
basic that you can't probably run programs.
Yeah, but there is internet. You can use the WhatsApp, and WhatsApp is one of the biggest usage for them. And like I mentioned before, they are also excellent programmers and app developers. So within their groups, they're creating their own apps. So the conversations that they need to send, the messages that they need to do. During the lockdown, they were using peer-to-peer technology to communicate, but because it cannot be for a group of people, and it's very short number of people and short distances, they were able to keep their communication to the bare minimum. But now that internet is opened up, and it rightfully had to be opened up, you could not lock an entire set of people because of that. You're going to have to deal with the terrorists over there. You can't allow them to destabilize normal life in Kashmir. You can't do that, right? So neutralize the terrorists is what the Indian government is doing. I think it's a great job that they're doing. I think they need to get a little bit more aggressive in securing the border areas, keeping an eye out on women, over the ground workers that are entering and leaving the country, and that is when they will be able to plug it. So I think it's time for India to have a very strong women force in Kashmir, which they will by next year, and also a lot of women intelligence in Kashmir at this point of time that can intercept the over the ground workers, because that's where most of the discussions are happening. And if you see in the protest, when a radical is killed, a terrorist is killed, it is mostly the women whose photographs appear. They're showing the women, that the women are the one hurt, the women are the one oppressed. That's not the real truth in Kashmir. There are a considerable amount of women that work with the terrorists and the radical outfits over there. And that's the problem that the Indian government must deal with.
Yes, and not only that, they also create a lot of noise through India. For example, Bernie Sanders, very thoughtless remark. I think it may have cost him the nomination also. At least one of the main reasons. He has a Pakistani American advisor, and he went and raised some funding with ISMA, Islamic something of America, and in that he said that freedom of communication is being curtailed in Kashmir Valley, that internet is not being enabled. The old geezer doesn't understand that every time there is some sort of an attack in a public place like a mall or any place where there is a congregation of people, the first thing the United States police or the law enforcement machinery does is shut down the internet, because they don't want a cascading effect. Because sometimes what happens is, to just create fear, people will have a cascading effect where they'll know that, oh, this has happened, then the next one goes off, and so on. And they found that it's usually via the internet that happens. So what happens? The law and order in the United States shuts down the internet. It may be 90 minutes. Wait a minute. Now, India is a third world country. It doesn't have the same kind of sophisticated tools that perhaps the American law and order machinery has to smoke out all these new algorithms. So they have to be more careful. But my point in all this is, they are trying every trick in the book, and new tricks are emerging out of the woodworks as they try to somehow deflect people's attention away from the core cause, which is that these people are being they believe that Kashmir is slipping away from their hand, and boy, what a fake outrage that is being put out. Last question, Savio. Till this August, till the abrogation, right? The Valley, I think even Jammu too, enjoyed subsidized food at a ridiculous amount of subsidized price. If you went and bought it from public distribution system, the food was like rice, wheat, sugar, ridiculously subsidized. I hope the Indian government has taken these subsidies away now that it is a regular part of India. What is your read on that situation?
Well, it's not only the subsidy that was offered to J&K that should be the moot point. I think it's the center stand on J&K over the last several years, not this government, but successive governments, on this mollycoddling situation with J&K. I think the BJP government has gotten a little firm as far as the abrogation is concerned. But you can't be giving out subsidies to states and people who do not respect your democratic values. Okay, but there are considerable amount of Kashmiris, Muslims, Hindus, Sikhs, Christians that believe in the democratic principles of India. You bar a few that are actually creating the fear and terrorism. In that context, I think in the inclusiveness that they want to do with between India and Kashmir, offering them subsidies, giving them better education, giving them better healthcare is fine. I don't see an issue with that. My only concern is, are they actually getting it? You know, there's been a lot of funds given to Kashmir, but has it actually been used for development of infrastructure? Has it been actually used for development of healthcare and education?
See, one thing that the current government is doing differently is, instead of giving the money in the hands of the central distribution agency, they have given it to the village sarpanches at the village panchayat level,
So
and
why do you think
hoping.
they're being attacked?
What?
Why do you think they're being attacked?
Right. Well, so that's the thing. I mean, they see real progress now. At least the people can spend the money in the local communities as they see fit, and that's a good thing. But finally, last thoughts here, because we are probably running a little low on time. Last thoughts here from you. The most important thing for this government to do, they have, of course, now also noise being created in the Chinese border, line of actual control. Now, you don't want them to take their eyes off of this 8 ball here. What is the last thing that you would like to tell the Indian government and also even the world community? Because I now see that they are starting to rake up some new fears. There's this organization that, in my opinion, should be shut down in the United States called the USCIRF. But I mean, I'm just a mere taxpayer. I don't have anything else beyond getting distressed by what they do. So, what would you like to say in conclusion of this talk?
Well, firstly, I think Kashmir is very slowly but steadily getting included into India holistically. It is going to be an arduous task for the government and the people of India together. And it has to be done together, taking into confidence the people of Kashmir. But the people of Kashmir are not only the majority in Kashmir. They're also the Kashmiri Pandits that don't live in Kashmir. And it's about time they've got their rights to move back into Kashmir and not live with fear. It is also about the Sikh community in Kashmir that have been living under constant strain and stress over the last couple of years, ever since militancy and terrorism has been, ramped up in as far as Kashmir is concerned. So it's about them as well. Is the Indian government on the right path in terms of neutralizing the terror activities in Kashmir? The answer is yes. They're doing a fantastic job. I think the Indian Armed Forces and the J&K police collectively are weeding out the terrorists that are there and are neutralizing them in a right manner. But what is failing on part of the Indian government is their ability to have a very strong political setup in Kashmir. And by political setup, I mean this over dependence on the existing political entities and the second rung leaders of the previous strong political leaders that existed in Kashmir. Because the root of corruption, the root of terrorism comes from the political leaders of the local outfits in Kashmir. So it is important to bring new blood into Kashmir, to give an opportunity to the new Kashmiri leaders in order to create a balance. It is also about getting other communities like the Sikh, the Christian, the Kashmiri Pandits back into mainstream politics in Kashmir. Now, Ajay Pandita was executed by the TRF because he was handing out domicile certificates, which means he was working in the process of getting Kashmiris to fill in their domicile certificates to come back into Kashmir, the Pandits into Kashmir. And that is the reason why they killed him. The TRF warning is also that. that if the Hindus think and want to come back and colonize and want to work with the Indian government on democratic policies, then they're going to attack them. So I think it's important for the Indian government to understand that the Sarpanches now are very critical to the inclusiveness with India. So in that context, protection for them is very important. Because if, as you rightly pointed out, the money is not going into the political leaders, it's going into the Sarpanch, village Sarpanch level by the Indian government. And in that context, then you need to be able to ensure that the security is there for these people, because the Sarpanches are working on development, right?
Yes.
So that is what people don't want to happen. They don't want development. You need to understand that any economic activity in Kashmir that gives promise to the young Kashmir is going to be met with resistance, because they don't want Kashmir to progress. So the Indian government, the prime thing right now after Ajay Pandita's murder and brutal murder, is that the Indian government must provide protection to all Sarpanches in Kashmir and Jammu. Kashmir, more importantly, right now.
Absolutely. As the country goes through a critical phase, I think this is the most important thing. And I'm wondering if it's now is not the time for India to seriously start putting in place a lot of retired ex-servicemen, their families with armed protection, perhaps creating some enclaves. Because remember that the Anantnag army barracks are adding more oomph there. And the other thing we need to also do, India needs to do, is to have an all-weather railway access line completely operational.
Yes.
There are still pieces that are missing. That needs to be done on a war footing. The reason for that is the faster you make all these things happen, the faster the valley is going to return to normalcy. They've been behind for a long time. I have one difference in opinion with you. I think that the subsidy should be withdrawn, because they need to understand the value of money. Right now, they're getting a lot of free money for not doing good stuff, but they're actually getting that free money for bad stuff. If you take away the subsidies, what happens? The money that is being given for stone pelting, all these other things will be used for basic purchases. That's what I'm trying to take some of the oxygen out.
I agree with what you're saying in the logic of it. But you see, Sri, the problem is where was the channel of the money flow, right? The problem with the channel of the money flow before was that the money was going to the people who were then using it for nefarious activities. If you clean that block, the chain, then why would the people who need genuine money in Kashmir would go into the radical outfits, right? Or genuine subsidies would go towards the radical outfit. The point is, the government at the state level, when it existed, they never were able to reach out to the people and provide for them. And that is when they were given this free money to become OGWs, to become militants, to become terrorists. And that's where they made a lot of money. And in Kashmir, the Kashmiris are not really poor in terms of the youth. They have considerable amount of money to spend on clothes and phones.
True. I completely agree with you there. So let's see how this thing plays out. Interesting viewpoints. And thank you, Savio, and stay safe. And I hope your reporter, chief reporter, and everybody else who is working for Goa Chronicle in the Valley stays safe. It's very important at this time when there is the country is going through a critical passage of history, that people stay safe. And thank you once again for joining our channel. And we'll be back with more such interesting conversations.
Thank you.